Good morning, children. Today, class for 10th class. Subject is biological science. Children, we started our second chapter, respiration, the energy producing system. So, in respiration process, we know that there are five steps are there. One is breathing. Second one is gas transport by the lungs, means gaseous exchange at lungs level. Next, gas transport by the blood, gaseous exchange at tissue level, cellular respiration. In previous classes, we discussed about the passage of air through the respiratory system in our body. Today, we clearly discussing about the mechanism of respiration. Children, you know that in our body, lungs play very important role in the breathing process, but the lungs neither itself draw the air into them and nor push the air outside the body. Okay, we know that the lungs play major role in the breathing process, but lungs itself neither draw the air into them nor push the air from outside the body into atmosphere. The chest wall and another flattened muscles called as diaphragm. What? The chest wall and another flattened muscles called as diaphragm helps the lungs during the inhalation process and exhalation process. What? The chest wall and another flattened muscles called as diaphragm helps the lungs during the inhalation process and exhalation process. Inhalation means nothing but you know that breathing air means nothing but oxygen into our body is called as inhalation. Exhalation means expelling or releasing of carbon dioxide from our body is called as exhalation. In general, we know about that inhalation and exhalation process. The chest wall is made up of with ribs, muscles, and skin. Normally, the chest wall is attached to the spine in a particular angle. Means nothing but spine means nothing but vennemuka. In Telugu, we can say vennemuka, backbone. Okay, the chest wall is attached to spine in a particular angle. And the diaphragm muscles are slightly convex in structure. Convex means means bulging outside. అంటే ఉబ్బెత్తుగా ఉండడం. ఓకే, what happens when we inhale? When the diaphragm contracts, it flattens. What? It flattens. At this time, the volume of the chest cavity increases. Okay, one time you have to take breath deeply. What do you observe, children? You observe that the chest size is increasing. Nothing but the volume of the chest cavity is increasing, and as a result, the pressure in the lungs decreases, and immediately the air from outside rushes into the lungs, means enter into the lungs. The whole process is called as inspiration or inhalation process. What? Inspiration or inhalation process. Okay, one time listen, children, carefully. When the diaphragm contracts, it flattens. The volume of the chest cavity increases. The volume of the chest cavity increases. Okay, when the diaphragm contracts, it flattens. The volume of the chest cavity increases. The internal pressure in the lungs decreases, and the air from outside rushes into the lungs. The whole process is called as a inspiration or a inhalation process. Children, after inhalation process, immediately we observe that exhalation process. Yes or not? Yes. Exhalation process or expiration process means nothing but releasing carbon dioxide into atmosphere from our body. You know that commonly. Yes sir? No? Yes. What happens during that exhalation process? So opposite to that inhalation process, we observe that the diaphragm relaxes, means nothing but comes to original position. Okay, the diaphragm relaxes, and the volume of the chest cavity decreases. In inhalation process, we observe that the volume of the chest cavity is increases. Okay, here the volume of the chest cavity is decreases. The internal pressure in the lungs, increases, and the air from the lungs is moved into the atmosphere. This whole process is called as expiration or exhalation process. What? Expiration or exhalation process. Okay, when the diaphragm relaxes, the volume of the chest cavity is decreases. The internal pressure in the lungs increases. The air from the lungs moved into the atmosphere. The whole process is called as expiration process. What? Expiration process. So this is the whole mechanism that you observed during the respiration process in the lungs. Okay, children, listen again once. We know that lungs play very important role during the breathing process, but the lungs itself can neither draw the air into them nor pushes the air from them. The chest wall and another flattened muscle called as diaphragm helps the lungs during the inhalation and exhalation process. The chest wall is made up of ribs, muscles, and the skin. The chest wall is attached to the spine at a particular angle. During breathing process, the diaphragm becomes convex. When the diaphragm contracts, it flattens. The volume of the chest cavity is increased. The internal pressure in the lungs decreases and the air from the atmosphere rushes into the lungs. The whole process is called as inspiration or inhalation process. When the diaphragm relaxes, the volume of the chest cavity is decreases. The internal pressure of the air in the lungs increases. The air from the lungs moved into the atmosphere. The whole process is called as expiration or exhalation process. Okay, this is the whole mechanism of respiration. What's the whole mechanism of respiration? Normally, in lungs, numerous teeny sacs, means bags, small bags like structures called as alveoli are present. So, what is the main function? Means nothing but the alveoli of the lungs increases the surface area of the lungs and store more volume of the air inside the lungs. Okay, inside the lungs. Normally, the lungs are covered by two layers of membrane. Okay, normally the lungs are covered by two layers of membrane, and the membrane that covers the lungs are called as pleura. What? Pleura. The membrane that covers the lungs are called as pleura, and in between the two membranes of the lungs, a fluid material is present. This pleura and the fluid material protects the lungs from the mechanical shocks. Mechanical shocks means nothing but sometimes unfortunately we hit to the harder object. So at the time the pleura and this fluid material protect the lungs from the mechanical shocks and injuries. So the lungs are covered by two layers of membrane. These layers are called as pleura, and a fluid material is present in between the two membranes of the lungs. This pleura and fluid material protect the lungs from the mechanical shocks and mechanical injuries. What? Mechanical injuries. Next, now we are going to discuss about the second step of respiration process, that is gaseous exchange at lungs level. Gaseous exchange at lungs level. So, in human beings, a pair of lungs are present in rib cage. Generally, these lungs are spongy in nature, means nothing but just like a sponge absorb the water, it stores the air. Okay, and so many teeny sacs are present in each lungs. These teeny sacs are called as alveoli. So in singular we call it as alveolus. What? Alveolus. Normally, the Cell walls or the cells of the alveolus are very thin, means nothing but for the exchange of gases it supports. Okay, suppose the cells are very thick at the time, the gases are not easily passes through the alveolus, so the cells of the alveolus are very thin, and each alveolus is covered by very thin blood capillary that are also one cell thick, means nothing but the blood capillary are also very thin. So the alveolus cells are also very thin, the blood capillaries that surrounds the alveolus are also very thin. At the time easily gaseous exchange takes place in between the alveolus and the blood capillaries. Blood capillaries means nothing but chinna chinna rakta nalalu in Telugu language. Okay, so the oxygen gas from the alveolus is exchanged to the blood capillaries, and the carbon dioxide gas is exchanged from blood capillaries to the alveolus. Okay, listen carefully. The oxygen gas from the alveolus is exchanged to the blood capillaries, and carbon dioxide gas is exchanged from blood capillaries to the alveolus. Okay, so in this way the gaseous exchange takes place at lungs level. Normally during the inhalation process we inhale only oxygen gas? Not. Why? Because nothing but when you observe the composition of air, near about 78% of nitrogen is there, 21% of oxygen is there, and 0.03% of carbon dioxide is there. So during the inhalation process we inhale the entire air. So during the inhalation process the percentage of gases are as follows. It means nitrogen 78, oxygen 21%, and the carbon dioxide is 0.03%. Next, during the exhalation process the composition of air is completely different. During the inhalation process the nitrogen concentration is 78. So during that exhalation process also the percentage of nitrogen is unchanged, means again it is 78 only. Next, during inhalation process the percentage of oxygen is 21, but during exhalation process the percentage of oxygen is only 16. We exhale 16% of oxygen. Why? Because nothing but our body cell utilize the oxygen. That's why the percentage of oxygen is decreased during the exhalation process, and the percentage of carbon dioxide is increased from 0.03 to 4.4%. Why? Because nothing but carbon dioxide is generated as waste material in our body, so that's why the percentage of carbon dioxide is increased. Okay, next, the lungs capacity means nothing but the lungs can store approximately 5800 milliliters of air into them. Okay, the total lungs capacity is 5800 milliliters of air, and in each inhalation we inhale 500 ml of air, and in each exhalation we exhale 500 ml of air. Okay, we later discuss about the gaseous exchange at the tissue level in the next class. Thank you, children.